Hey guys, it's Syama here, and we are back to. Hey guys, it's Syama here, and we are back today with another live one-on-one consultation. Today we'll be speaking with Laura from Viv and Edie, and I'm excited to get a chance to see her and talk to her about her business. You know, before we get started, I know it's been a pretty crazy weekend for everyone across the country, amidst the 3 months of the coronavirus lockdown, and now amidst all these riots and looting. We're definitely coming up against some crazy times out there, and so I just want everyone to be really safe. And this is an important moment to sit back and understand our values and really have empathy. To give love to one another. So today's conversation is going to be about business, but obviously, as we are talking through business and all of those things, business is also very personal. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk to Laura. So let me get her on the line here. All right.
Hey Laura, how are you?
Hi, Sham. I'm well, thanks. How are you? Let me turn my
Oh,
volume up here. Sorry, one
all
second.
right.
There we go. Hi, thanks
Awesome.
for talking with me.
No, of course. Thanks for being here. How was your weekend? How are you feeling? I feel like it's like the big the big equalizer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Fortunately, my studio is in my home, and I'm safe and happy. My heart hurts for the world right now. Frankly, the
Yeah.
all protesters and um, the people of color community, and it's just, and then everyone stuck at home and everyone without jobs. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
Um, but I am happy and healthy
You're
now.
okay. Yeah, I think that there's the solidarity aspect of standing with our brothers and sisters who are, who 3 months ago were on the front lines of fighting this crazy coronavirus. Now those who are standing for social justice and racial justice issues. And um, dude, like, what on earth is going to happen else this year?
I know,
It's
I
like
know,
I'm
I
like,
know.
oh my God, like, what is
I,
going on?
I just saw someone post a picture of like 20 frogs they found in their window well, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Is it raining frogs? It's all
Um,
happening."
it's crazy. It's like, yeah, like everything is happening.
We got war, pestilence, frogs, you name it.
You got it. I think that there's like something to be said about being in community and being in support of each other. And to that effect, I'm excited to support you today.
Thank you
And
so much.
I'm
Appreciate
excited to like dive in a little bit more and see what's going on. So, um, those of you guys out there who are watching, Viv and Eddie, I'm gonna go ahead and
it.
put this in here.
Viv and Edie.
Edie, see, okay.
Happens all the
Okay.
time, so maybe that wasn't such the best choice.
Yeah, well, it's like that other brand that I like. I'm gonna put this in the comments so people can see this. I like, I guess now it's Edie Parker, but I used to call it Eddie Parker. God damn
Okay.
it. I'm like now I've like totally now I'm like, damn it, I'm in fashion. I should know these things. Ugh.
It's
All
not an
right.
uncommon name now. It's, a last generation name, so
I know it's beautiful though. That's
it is.
beautiful. Okay, so yes, I got the name properly. Let me post it. Perfect. So
Thank
that
you.
people, yeah, of course. I want people to see and check it out. Especially, I think it'll be helpful as we're kind of going through some of the components about your business and what's happening. So, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to connect last week. It sounds like you had a lot of stuff going on. Catch me up. I know there's some like specifics we want to get into, but for myself and everyone else, like just aside from, I was going to say, what's going on in your world, but what what's not going on in your world in the macro sense, but like in the business sense, what's going on in
Sure.
your world?
Sure. Well, I started, actually, I spoke with you on the phone several years ago. I was starting a belt company. And you're probably very good advice at the time essentially was, are you sure belts right now? and, um, And so I wanted to make them anyway, and I forged ahead for several years, only to find I got some pretty good sales and I got some publicity, but not enough to sustain a business, not enough to sustain the amount of time I was putting into it. And so you were right. And so what I decided to do was pivot to bags.
Cool.
I've spent the last couple of years trying to figure out what my niche is, what I love to make. And I've found that I really like to make these hard-sided Minaudiere clutches. And I really have learned that I like to be hands-on. I can make them by hand, which limits my capacity, obviously, for scale. I can probably only personally produce maybe 50 to 100 a year. But I also don't ever, I want to be a solopreneur. I really like that. And so I have been studying for the last few years all of the, the high-end bag makers that work in this genre, in this niche, and understanding how they're made and perfecting my craft. And now I have a good. I have, I think, a product that is comparable to the Bottega Veneta's out there in terms of quality. And I've also created a method by which I can give you an example, which I can do metallic foiling. So so I can do any number of colors in any pattern I want. I have some other that I can find. And I believe I'm the only company in the world able to offer this, because you can't really do it on a massive scale. Well, so what I'm saying is I can customize it. So you can't customize on a large scale. And I think the tool with which I do this was only invented about within the last year. And it was invented for crafters, not really leather workers or bag makers. So I think I'm also pushed it to do things that it wasn't intended to do. So I think I have a unique formula. I think that
someone's kind of an engineer.
A little bit, yeah. I was gonna say my dad's an engineer.
There's a little bit of like there's like an engineer inside of you. I can tell.
Sure.
You're like, I'm gonna toil with this and make it like, I like it. My brain sometimes also works like that. So not all the time, but yeah, that's really cool.
Thanks. And so that plus my sculpture, I used to do jewelry, and then these belt buckles I used to make. So I'm able to, I'll try to find some more images while I'm talking to you. I'm able to create embellishments, like dimensional, here, one second, they're all clustered on the table right next to me. I'm able to make, let's see, sculptural embellishments for my bags, and here's one. Here's a good example. And I can work in, so like this crystal lizard, for instance.
Yeah, so cool. And that one retails for $27.50.
Yes, currently. Yeah. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. But the thing that is awesome about these, because I do make them myself, is that this interior is suede, but I work in suede and lambskin. I can do any color interior, and this is eel skin, but I can work in, leather, alligator, eel, snake.
Do you have an interest do you have a stronger interest in like a bespoke custom business than you do? Okay.
Yes, sorry, I wandered off about my bags. But
No. Yeah, I'm just, the way that you talk about your products are almost as if you are like each one's kind of this journey that's open-ended, and you can kind of, that you sound very excited about it, which is cool.
I am very excited about it.
Your customers are who?
So that's what I mostly have to figure out. My customers are, well, I'm sort of making them up at the moment, to be honest, which I know is the opposite of the marketing approach, and probably what landed me in belts as well. Yeah. So we'll see.
But very common. So everyone does it. No one fucking listens to me. But whatever.
You're like, fine. Story of my life. So I guess my ideal client is, I would say she is probably in her late 40s and above. She is well-to-do, is a, VP and above professional, probably doctors and lawyers. She is a peacock. She likes, she likes luxury goods, but is not necessarily interested in or is not tied to at
Yeah.
least the heritage labels. You know, she likes modern art. She likes
Mm.
artists and to
I'm
support
going to
them.
go so far as to
Yeah,
say your customer is going to be the person who you separate the cash from their wallet and put it into your bank account.
amen,
So
sister.
like so so sometimes when we think about like who the customer is, it's like actually the only
She's the
customer
one
I
who pays
care
me.
about is the one who gives you cash.
That's right.
So like,
That's right.
and she may or may not be any of those things.
Right.
Okay, so fair enough. So we have a lot of hypotheses here on who we think she is.
That's right.
So I would say before we dive any deeper, some initial thoughts on your website. Your brand, for the amount of bespokeness and the
Uh-huh.
artisanal craftsman, like you as the artist. So here's what's really cool. Like in the last like 5 years or so, like this notion of like the maybe even longer, maybe 7 years, 10 years, the CEO, like founder, celebrity has become really important.
Hmm.
And it's important because people are wanting authenticity and transparency, and they want to know who they're buying from, why that person gives a shit about that product, like why they should care, like what's the story, what's the feel, like almost as if they were stepping into your craft studio where like they were sitting down next to you and like having this very personal experience. With your price points and the level of like detail and like how intimate this experience is. And honestly, if I'm going to spend $3,000 on a handbag, like unless it's a name brand, it's got to be like unique to me and intimate to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that that story gets lost. In fact, it's not even found. Like it's not. It's that emotional storytelling of like, here's my story. It's like here's Laura's story.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's my story. Here's why I love doing what I'm doing. Here are the tools and the techniques that I use. Here's why it's important for me to translate, these pieces of art for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And here's why you're going to spend $3,000 as if it was like you were buying a painting from an artist,
Sure.
or a sculpture or something you would keep. So like you're actually not set like for you what you're selling is not necessarily this product. You're selling the experience of creating the product,
Yeah,
right? It's
collaboration.
like exactly. You're giving someone who maybe has already bought all those designer handbags, someone who already owns the Bottega and is like, I don't need another Bottega. I don't need another Chanel. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need an Hermes. I don't need a Gucci. I
Right.
don't need a
I've got those.
Valextra.
I've
I
got
don't need a
those.
Balenciaga. Like I don't need those things anymore because I have them. And
Right.
now what I want is the process of collaboration. And that process of collaboration became so like so valuable when I saw like a few years ago this brand launch called One Atelier. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you're familiar with them, but
No.
they actually came up with this great partnership with Nordstrom's, and I've purchased a couple of their bags because it's like you could customize the whole thing and the artisan and this and the, it's like there's this feeling of like mutuality. And their infrastructure, I think, might be very different than likely what you would build out. But like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with your price. I think there's something wrong with your branding and delivery of your messaging.
Okay. Great.
And I think if you want to be the bespoke artisan
Mm-hmm.
who's like creating that, then we also need to think about like how does your brand like how are like the fact that your brand name isn't you
Right.
is also somewhat problematic for me because it's like disassociative. It's like almost having like a pen name, right? If I'm
Right.
the author and I have a different pen name. But the notion that this is that you can only produce, it's almost like saying I will only make 100 bags a year.
Mm-hmm.
And because I will only make 100 bags a year, I will choose my clients. I will, decide if they're a good fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're going into like a consulting business, but you're co-developing with someone who's going to want this product that you are creating with them. And so if they're not the right customer,
Right.
then you also don't want to work with them.
Agreed.
Right. So this is like way more emotional than like selling handbags online.
Okay.
And it's more emotional because there's a limited number of pieces,
Hmm.
and it's more emotional because it's a higher price point. And
Gotcha.
it's more emotional because you are creating these and collaborating. So it's very emotional on all levels. And like from a business modeling standpoint, if only making 100 of these a year, so people start businesses for different reasons, right? Some of them are like scale, and there's some people have this like innovation path with entrepreneurialism. I want to build a tech thing. I want to build a thing. I want it to scale. I'm going to get investors. I want to make it a big thing. Other people have entrepreneur dreams that are more SMB style, right? I want to have my own brand. I want it to be small. I want to be independent. So like both are entrepreneurs, but they're different. And
Sure.
I think for you, if you've already done the kind of personal finance planning around this, and you know for yourself that you can that the economics of this works, then it really becomes an issue of positioning it, communicating it, and like also networking and socializing. So my next question is like, obviously we're all under quarantine, but pre-quarantine, like, what's your social life like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, uh, it's pretty good. I've actually moved from LA to Denver about 4 years ago. And so I didn't really know very many people, but now I'm reaching
Hmm.
out as much as I can. My husband is a doctor, so I'm trying to branch out into that community of the women doctors and
Mm-hmm.
the male doctors' wives. And I know I need to seek out some like various clubs to join.
Yes.
I
You
found,
need friends, girlfriend. Like
I know.
you need friends, and you need friends like who belong at Soho House, and
Yes.
like you need to, it's almost like it's interesting. It's like you are only going to be as strong as your brand, your
Yeah.
product, and your network.
Yeah.
Like that is what it is for you. So like, you know, product looks beautiful. I'm going to take your word for it when you talk about the quality and all of that. So product is there. Brand needs to be established, but the brand without the network, right, is not going to go anywhere. So like and you're not going to be able to you're not the brand that's going to do paid advertising. You're
Right.
not the brand that's going to be on Facebook ads. Like you may not be on Instagram, like maybe, but in a very curated, like very edited way. Like your problem is different than the problem that other brands have when they launch, which is like get in front of as many eyeballs as possible. That's what most people's problem is. Your problem is going to be how do I get in front of the right people,
Hmm.
nurture those relationships, and become like a word of mouth go to uh, brand that like people are gonna talk about, and also to some degree land that press, right? But not in a advertising way, right? Like when you land the press, it's gonna be like, oh, these celebrities are wearing this product, or
Right.
like, oh, this is like if you look at ever like Departures magazine, and it's like, and you see
Department is on my list.
I know,
Department.
I love Departures.
Yeah.
So like you see Departures magazine and it's like all this beautiful shit and you're like, "Oh my God, like if I bought everything
Coincidentally, I
on
was
this
going to pitch them
page,
this week, so that's actually funny you
oh
should
my
say
God,
that.
really? That's
Yeah.
amazing." Yeah, it's like that is where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
It's like so it's different. It's different than like, "Oh my God, I need to like I'm working right now with a brand and like, it's all about like the People magazine and the Fast Company and the this thing and that thing and it's a
Yeah, that's not.
very different like consumer mindset." Um, so as far as like pricing and stuff, like I don't see an issue with your pricing.
Okay.
I think you could probably like smooth out the numbers a little bit. So like, it could be like 2,800 or
Okay.
2,600, like there's something
Round
about your
numbers.
numbers that feel forced, and
Okay.
that's really intuitive and emotional and probably like, I couldn't like give you, there's a lot of like studies against like if you put a .99 or a
Yeah.
.5, and those are really mass market retailing kind of things. So like, But using these rounder numbers, I think would feel better. Um, and I think your product looks beautiful. I also think the
Thank you.
nature of your photography, to me, that's heavy flash, you know, like it feels really like boom, this is the product. I'd like to see something that feels like um feels like I'm kind of like in something that's a little bit more, it's something that's softer, you
Okay.
know, like where the lighting isn't quite as strong. Um, and let me see if there's anything.
Are there any brands that have an aesthetic that you think is a better match that you can
You
help?
know, I would need to look, but absolutely. Um, and then I also think, you know, instead of necessarily having a model shot, I would do what like Net-a-Porter does with their like I would do what Net-a-Porter does with their like earrings and stuff like that, where it's just like a silhouette of
Oh
someone,
yeah. Okay.
you know, and
Yeah.
you can just
Yeah.
have a silhouette, like it's a shaded silhouette, and you could see the products. You can get an idea of scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think that would be really cool.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and like the chain, like there's like I think the branding needs to shift, like how you show the chain, like how like again it's overexposed, it's too flashy.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I think, you know, I think you have a cool, I think like, and then like the email thing, like you're not gonna, it's gonna be different. Like you're not gonna be like collecting a ton of emails, you know, and like sending like mass emails quite in the same way. It's gonna be different for you. Um, and I think it's gonna be more like texting your customers.
Okay.
You know, and I think you might have like a monthly newsletter where people can see what's going on in your world of inspiration, what's going on in your world of like sketches or design, but like again, kind of from this perspective of like an artist's story rather than like I'm a small bespoke custom brand, but I'm going to act like a much bigger brand. Like really lean into what it is you want.
Okay. Awesome. I was thinking, you talked about not being on Instagram. I kind of had an epiphany this weekend that like the overarching idea of this brand is about um, what's the best way of putting this? About sort of like helping women let their special unique freak flag fly.
Mm,
Like I want to help overall. Like I want to help you make your statement, you know, make your visual statement, make you like be who you are, right?
mm,
So I was thinking about my Instagram feed, and part of what I've been doing in the past that actually felt really good was highlighting artists, you know, women artists who are making beautiful but sort of quirky, unique kinds of art.
mm.
Um, and thinking of highlighting, you know, and my sort of aesthetic is um, glam, fun, chic.
Mhm.
So highlighting women who are, you know, very much being their own, you know,
And
glam.
I would think of it as like a digital publication for you
Like,
rather than like a client acquisition strategy.
okay,
This is more about like people who want to understand what drives you and what's important to you and whether or not they like you,
okay, great.
right? So it's, I would say like, I wouldn't look at it as like, I would think of yourself as like a design misfit, you know? It's
That's
like,
very right.
yeah, it's like, you know, you're an artist, you are experimenting,
Hmm.
you're playing,
Yeah.
and someone who wants to play with you is gonna like see, it's like see your feed and be like, oh, this is where she draws her inspiration from. Like this is, you know, these are the things and people that inspire her. It's still very curated and edited, but it's not like click here to purchase the thing.
Okay, great. So that was another thing that I was thinking about. Like, so it probably almost doesn't even make sense to set up my website as a, you know, a purchase, like buy this bag and you can
I
use
would
it.
change it. I would do like, you know, like a selection of the artist's favorites, you know, or it's almost like, you know, a curated selection of things that, you're creating in your studio, right? While you do these commissioned pieces. So I would just frame the whole thing. It's still the same idea, right? Like you're still kind of doing what you're doing.
Right.
That doesn't change at all. It's how you communicate it and what people think their and what people think their own, like, what they're getting out of it. Like people need to feel like they're getting a lot out of this experience with you. So like when they see some of these products on your site, these need to be things that are, you know, they're things that are coming out of your studio, like from the studio. And it's like, you know, things that you're creating that you're passionate about that has some storytelling, you know, like this is why you created this. This is why it's important. It has this detail. Like it, you know, this was the time it took to do this part of it. Like here's the like there's just it's if it's gonna be art, it's gotta, like, you know, you gotta bleed for it, you know, like it's gotta like have that feeling. Because that is, it's not even because that's what they want to, it's less about like getting them to buy it. It's the story that they're going to tell about that product when they wear it.
Yeah.
I bought it from Laura. She did this technique, used this thing, like it took, you know, 40 hours and blah, blah, blah. Like they own that story when they buy that piece. So
Gotcha.
you're writing the story for them to adopt.
Gotcha. That's the especially hard part for me though, because it requires objectivity that I don't have. I might need to hire someone to write those stories for me.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. But it can also be personal, you know,
Yeah.
it's personal with edits, you know,
Yeah.
like I always like to say, like the business version of ourselves should be authentically us with like grammar and spell check, you know,
Sure.
like you gotta have the grammar and spell check. All right, Laura, any other questions or things that I can answer for you in our short little time together?
No, this was awesome. I guess the only thing I would ask is that if you guys can get back to me about how I can work with you next year, if you're available
Yeah, of course.
because
Yeah,
this
I
audience
would.
is priceless.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's it's a real pleasure and a gift to spend some time with you. And it was great to chat about what you're up to. And you know, between now and the next time that we speak, I would say, like, you know, really spend some time writing and thinking about this brand from the perspective of an artist. And like and I would like start by planting that seed, you know, as you start to make changes before we get to work together.
That's a deal. Thank you so much. This time I'm listening, I promise.
Okay, good. Everyone else who's watching, you know, you gotta listen to me. You know, I've been called a benevolent dictator before, so
That's what I need.
There might be something to that. All right, Laura, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Syama. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.